All right, so right now we're going to be talking about organizing content for your infographics. I am going to be using this year's Health Tech Jam as the example for the infographic I'm going to be creating, but you can follow along with whatever information you like. The first step, regardless, is going to be to gather up all of the content that you have. So literally everything that might be relevant to what you want to include on your infographic, gather it all up and put it all in one place. And once you have that in one place, we're going to look at how we're going to edit it down. So what in this tells a story, and then is there a variety of information types in here? So as my example, I have gathered up all of the information on the Health Tech Jam for this year. We've got our titles, when, where, who was invited. We have a big paragraph of text about the event, a general logo, an image that I know for sure that I want to include. I have the entire event schedule. I have some facts about UIC News attending. And then lastly, I kind of have our results for the entire day, our results from participation surveys. So edit it down. What about this tells a story? I really want to include all of the information about it, but I don't necessarily know if I really need to include, do I need to include Chicago, Illinois, and the zip code? No, I don't. So I'm going to take that out, and I'm just going to say that it was at the College of Applied Health Sciences. If we're going down a little bit more, I like including the event schedule, but do I really need to say that UIC News was attending? No, I don't really think I need to do that. This is much more about how we planned it, what the schedule was, what the event was itself, and then the results of the event. So I'm going to take out UIC News attending. When I'm looking at this, I've got big paragraphs. I have big sections, big bold. I want to include 6-hour event total as a big descriptor. I have kind of a timeline, a day 1 and day 2 timeline. And then I have a bunch of numbers down here too. Numbers, percentages, ratings. This is a bunch of different info types. So general text versus data itself. So the next step is going to be to break your content up into organized sections. And if you think about some of the better infographics that we've seen, you want to have more than 2 sections, but you really don't want to have more than 4 or 5 at the most. I'd say between somewhere between 2 and 4 is the golden area for sections. So I'm going to be creating 3 sections in my infographic. I have gone ahead and just purely for organizational purposes, I've highlighted each of my sections. So section 1 is my introduction. Here I've included everything text-wise, everything content text-wise that is going to be included in the introduction of what this event is. Down here we've got our event schedule. I want this to be its own section. I think it could be interesting to have in a timeline format. And then lastly, we've got section 3, our results. This is a really easy way to break up the information about our event, is just to say 1, 2, 3, each of the types of sections. Although the kind of nice thing is that even with that, we still do have different types of things. And then prioritize items within each of the sections. So for my introduction, one of the things that I wanted to do here was, even though I have this in order, I know that I want to have this at the top. This is the first thing I want people to see. The title of the infographic. We have our subheaders, we have our text, and I think I do want the last thing to see in the order to be the information about what it is. But it's not just about layout and how you're reading it top to bottom. Remember that we can give more important more prioritized things, more visual salience. So the things that we want to stick out to people, we can make larger, we can have color contrast, we can have motion. So what I've done in here is within this section, I've sort of listed them 1 to 6 in terms of how much salience, how much visual salience I want them to have. So I want my number 1 thing to be number 1. I want it to be the most important thing. And as much as I do want to include Tuesday, March 6th and Wednesday, March 7th, and I want it to be the second thing they see, it's not that important. The second prioritized thing is to shout out and say, it was a big 6-hour event. That's the next thing we're going to include. We're taking out the address again. Number 3 was the people that were included. Number 4 is the big description. And then the location here and the date. All of this goes in an order. The layout goes in an order. But we're giving more visual salience to the things that we have decided are more important. These 2 things, I sort of decided that because they're on 2 days from the exact same time period, day 1 went from 5 to 8, day 2 went from 5 to 8, I'm going to give each of these timelines 50%. 50% of their section. So maybe left and right, maybe top and bottom. But the nice thing is that they won't be totally symmetrical because the days weren't identical. We had different things at different times. So it'll be balanced on either side, but it won't necessarily be boring and totally symmetrical. And then down here, I want my results to be the highest salience thing. Want some of my facts to be the first thing that they see, but not as high salience. And then the last thing down here. And I've sort of broken it up into, I want this to be a pie chart. I want this to be a bar graph down here. I've gone and decided what visual format I want each of these things to be in. Now we're going to talk about wireframing. Wireframing is a method of blocking in sections of an infographic or any sort of design to prepare yourself for how the layout is going to go. So one of the biggest rules is you want to start from the big picture and then get into the nitty-gritty details. We are going to be doing low fidelity wireframes. Low fidelity essentially means not looking like the final. Very, very simple black and white shapes. It's not what your final is going to look like, but it is going to be a really, really important foundation for how you're going to make the better one. So a high fidelity wireframe would be all of your colors, your icons, your fonts. Wireframing is for the most part developed for or used for app design, website design, but it's really important for infographic design too, because it's how you're deciding, it's all your preliminary work into making sure that your users, your viewers, can follow the story and are drawn to the more important parts of your infographic. So let's actually go ahead and do this. If I have a new PowerPoint presentation, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make it this size, right? So what you're going to do is if you have a brand new PowerPoint slide, go over to Design, go to Size Slide, and instead of picking one of the normal 2, you're going to hit Page Setup. Now, some people start with 8.5 because it's the standard printer paper size. Other people recommend starting with 6 inches wide because it is guaranteed to fit on a blog post. But generally, this is kind of the size that I start with. Notice that it's a long infographic, but it's not that long. And if you need to change it later, you can always change it. So once you have that set up, go ahead and just remove any content that you already have on there. And let's wireframe this to best reflect the content that we've organized. So I am going to pull up my Word document, all of my organized content next to my wireframe. And I'm going to zoom all the way out. That way I can see everything at once. So remember, when with this stage of wireframing things, you want to look at it from the big picture and then go in. So I'm going to say insert. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert really basic shapes. So in illustrations, shapes, I'm going to pick a box, and I'm just going to draw out a box really quickly. Remember that the best way to organize these wireframes for yourself is to do really simple black and white line. So the shape fill is white. The shape outline is this sort of blue-gray color because I like it. And then you can change the width or the weight to be a little bit bigger if you're having trouble seeing things. I know that for me, I have organized my sections into introduction, schedule, and results. So I'm going to go ahead and make 3 boxes that reflect my outline. So I've got, come here, you. I've got my last one, I've got my middle one, and I've got my top one. Now, if I'm looking at all of my stuff, I think that section 3 is going to be a lot smaller. I like the idea of section 1 being big and eye-catching, but I don't think it's going to be that big. I think that section 2 is probably going to be the biggest. So I'm going to stretch these boxes up and break it into our little sections in here. It's kind of nice because this is pretty well balanced. I might make this a little bit bigger. And bring this down a little bit. All right. So let's just do section 1 for now. I'm just going to copy and paste this shape again so that I don't have to worry too much. And I'm going to say this is going to be our header. I already know that I like these I like the infographics where we have a little bit of space at the top or some sort of set of images and then the title. This is going to be my header. I am going to use this to represent my subheader maybe. We've got another subheader. I'm going to put this maybe over here. Yeah, sure, why not? We've got some more text. But actually, now that I think about it, so we've got subheader when, and then we've got subheader 6-hour event total. I think I'm going to make that kind of big because we want to give that some salience. So we're still moving through this in order. We've got 1, 2, 3. And then maybe I'll spice things up a little bit by saying the location, I'll throw that under here. So it's a little bit smaller. And then already we're sort of seeing that I'm going to need a little bit more space in this top section. And yeah. Maybe we'll say, since this is going to be small text, we'll put that there, and we'll say that this is going to be the who section. All right, so how are we reading through this? We're reading through it from left to right, from top to bottom. This is going to be one big chunky color, or set of colors and numbers. This is going to be small text. This is going to be larger text. So we're kind of able to guesstimate that our eye is going to be able to move through this a lot more nicely, and it's still going to be balanced from left to right. Do we really know that for sure yet? No, but that's okay. So this is just an introduction to breaking down everything. If you have areas where, let's say you want to include a pie chart later down, you're not going to make the pie chart yet. You are just going to have a little square that represents where your pie chart is going to go. And then if you want to, you can have other boxes that represent a key or something like that. Regardless, though, right now you're just going to be focusing on these basic shapes.